Well, hello, welcome for the second part of the second book review on the Goju Karate series. And so just to kind of give you a little context, actually I probably context way too much, so please bear with me. But I tried doing all these at once. So what I was doing, I did the Karate Dojo, then I grabbed this next book and then the last book, and I had a real long video, and I found myself not really covering the things I thought were most important to cover. So I decided then to refilm all of them and then re-edit them. And that's taken me much longer in this process, but hopefully a better review and I'm not wasting your time. So please bear with me, and I hope you find this next review very important. I will say that in trying to redo this review, when I decided to break it up, the first time I shot this one, I didn't even know I had the time lapse on. And so, as you can see here, and so what I had to do, of course, now is do it over. You just got to laugh at those things. It's fun. So this is the second book. This is the Karate Goju Meibukan book. And I'm going to go over it, hopefully brief enough to give you some insight about this particular lineage of Goju Karate and why this book is really good. So out of the three books, I've had many other Goju books. I've had this one here, I've had this one here, and I've had this one here, and some others. And what I've done over the years is I get one and I loan one to somebody, or I just give one away. And when I loan a book, I found not to be disappointed that I don't expect it back. I just hope it comes back. And if I give one, I just give one. And I've had that habit. However, it is unlikely I'll ever loan this one. I may, but it's unlikely. And then the third book, I'll never loan it out. So, and I'll discuss that when I get it. So I would probably unlikely loan this one out. And why I find myself just referencing it too often. And therefore I don't want to have to go to Amazon and get it. The Karate Dojo, I've loaned so many of those out. That's why I don't have the original one I bought back in the early 80s over the years. That I didn't have any one time in my Goju Sensei Hanshi, Dan Heck, pictured here, gave me one time, and I felt really bad about that. So that was in the early 90s. So now I've went through periods where I just had 4 or 5 copies of it because I've found myself loaning it out. But this book, Karate Goju Meibukan, is written by Goju karateka Lex Opdan out of the Netherlands. And I say that because I find that fun. I've been to certain parts in Europe. I've been to Asia, and of course the United States, where I'm from. And when I've traveled, if I've been able to, I try to see martial arts practice in other areas. And I find it fascinating. And I even try to buy books, even if it's in their language, and pick it up and look at the photos, or if I can, try to find a way to decipher and look at it. Even if you don't know a language, you can learn a language without speaking it with a good lexicon and go through there. So I've done things like that. And this book, it gives its unique European flavor to it, but while still remaining very much Goju Karate. And so I found that really nice about this book. But I also want to go with this book because it really says about the divergent styles of Goju, really, and it gives just a highlight of it, but immediately upon Miyagi's death. So Miyagi passed away in 1953, leaving no apparent successor. And of course, when the founders pass away, that's when the divisions tend to start. And almost in anything in life, that's where it happens. But what will happen is that they will gather a meeting with his top students at the home of Naka Maya to decide who would be named the successor of Miyagi. And there was a lot of disagreement. And the meeting ended without a result. It will be his family, his wife, Makoto, and his daughter, Yasuko, to decide the name of the successor. And it'll be Miyazato, who will take over the training and become the head of the dojo in Okinawa. And why do we get this form of... So Mitoku Yagi decided to break away and called his dojo and educational method Meibukan. And many other important students will follow. So you'll see already this breakaway. What is interesting, though, is that this will really take hold more in Europe. It will be all around, so I'm broad brushing a little bit. But this system will really take hold in Europe. Well, Yamaguchi, the Cat Yamaguchi's Japanese system, which he becomes the head, will really kind of take off initially in the mid-50s and 60s and early 70s in the United States of America. Another one will take off in America, and I mentioned him briefly, Tiro Chinen. Well, Tiro Chinen was a student of Miyazoto. As I understand it, it's not in this book here, but as I understand it, knowing people who studied directly under Chinen for many years and got their black belts. But basically, he was sent, for lack of a better word, as a disciple to spread this information and knowledge of Goju. So you'll see these divisions taking place. It's why in the United States, though, I think you really have two. You have United States Goju, and then you have Okinawan Goju. And in the Goju USA, there's the heavy American influence, and you see the Japanese influence from Yamaguchi. And in the Okinawan Goju, you'll see more of that influence, straight lineage to Miyagi and Okinawa. So the one goes to the United States, Japan, back to Okinawa. One goes from Okinawa to the United States. And you can see the variations. So I like to kind of look at it that since I used a religious imagery out of Christianity, and you really see out of what we call the Synoptic Gospels. Out of the Synoptic Gospels, that would be Matthew, Mark, and Luke, about 70% of them are the same, and 30% they have variations or differences because they see it from a different perspective or historical analysis or as a witness. That'd be a different discussion on a different type of channel if I created one. But in any case, you kind of see that in these lineages in Goju Karate. 70, 80% similarities and then differences. And my experience has been in the European world, the differences are smaller than in the American Goju world. But I think Lex in his book did a really good job, and I've really has enjoyed reading because he gets into the branches, and the branches, of course, are all over. This is not European-centric, though he's European, and I have found in my travels it to be strong in the European area, this form of Okinawan Goju Karate. But it's a very fascinating, quick introduction into the history of Goju Karate. And I think he does an outstanding job of making it pretty simple. I also like that he has pictures you just don't see very often. Like this one here of Miyagi, who's the founder of Goju Karate. It's a neat picture because a lot of the pictures are just like this cover. It's just the face. You'll see him in magazines or other martial art books. And this one, he actually gets down to where Miyagi, as you can see here, hands are on his knees. And so you just don't see that very often. And so I think it's a really, really neat, and he gets into the family crest. The next part of the book gets into the kata, as seen here. Just doesn't start right off, okay, this is kata. He gets into the katas, its origins and history. And I think that's kind of a neat. He even talks about the adjustments to Sanchin kata, what happens there. So you get a few pages of really good narrative and how it's supposed to even help the muscular system. And then he begins to demonstrate the katas. But there's a lot of information on kata. And what I really appreciate was the mental aspects of it. Because kata has been, out of all my karate training over all these years, kata has been probably my least favorite and biggest struggle. But I have found, especially in times when I've been injured in my life, and as I get older, it to be an extremely important part. And now I somewhat regret that I did not place the emphasis I should have in my early days. Because in my early days, I'll be honest, I just wanted to go out and compete and fight and train like I was. So it's got some really good pictures in here. It has him as well as the students performing. And then I also like, he's got parts where he just shows the feet. You see that here. the placement and the movements of those and what's going on. So I think it does a very, very good job. And he does a very good job of showing the isolations of these movements. So if you look at this picture here, you'll see he has isolated the movements with, you'll see that he's isolated the movements by showing these lines and then identifying what those lines are, and as pictured here. And I think that's pretty important. In doing so, these lines and numbers and letters reference something in the text. That's important, and he explains that. So I thought that was a very good. One thing I really, really enjoyed in here is this section on Kumite. Not only does he go over through pictures certain aspects of Kumite and the different types of Kumite sparring, but I really prefer more what he discusses about Kumite. I find that to be much more important in understanding Kumite, because for us who have practiced karate for a decent amount of time, I don't necessarily need pictures on how to perform a technique. Sometimes I can learn something from that, or a video or a seminar, but I learn more from a book by reading the book, especially now that I've been practicing for many years. So I like that he does a good job in that. And he talks about Kumite, attack and defense. He shows pictures of people who were training back in Okinawa and Japan from a long time ago. He has a moment here about alertness, close-in fighting. And for Goju Karate, close-in fighting is focused on just as much as distance fighting. And then he talks about the misunderstanding of body contact. And I want to read this paragraph right here. It is often said that karate techniques, especially punches, are stopped before the target. This is a misconception. In Goju Karate, one punches through the target. As a Goju master once told me, they can scratch me on my skin, but I will break their bones. And you can go on YouTube and you'll see some sparring of Goju Karate. Matter of fact, I'm going to put just some right here. And you can see where Kyokushin got some of this sparring. Goju Karate, as I've always found out, is still pretty physical. I will say, once you get to the Japanese land and Yamaguchis, it would almost take a point spar perspective, and then that will kind of happen in the United States. But also, Urban's in New York. It'll be a point sparring world when it comes to this. But also, there tends to be a full contact sparring world in the dojo. So Goju has largely kept a really hard sparring for the appropriate belt level and time and maturity level. And I like that he covers a little bit of that here. So I have found when I've traveled that in Europe, and maybe it doesn't quite take the American perspective a little bit on that, maybe a little bit more polite in the sparring. But I have found it very helpful, but I also found his quote was helpful in Goju. It's not just the old point system, oh, I could have got you. It is, no, I got you. And I think that's important. The book continues to go on, and he's got a large part in the appendices of the books where he does a lot more discussion, and there's also Q&A that takes place. And I've always enjoyed Q&As in a book, whether it's an interview format or whether the author is anticipating questions. I think it's very, very good. Now, I would probably disagree with one thing, and I'm going to bring that up. Don't you think it is necessary to engage in free fighting to achieve good fighting skills in the street? No. Let's say a person has been practicing Karate-Do very diligently for 5 or 10 years. After so much practice, a student should have developed good, strong techniques and fast reflexes and should be able to defend himself against any unprovoked attack. That's where I would have my disagreement. I've met a lot of people who hold to this view, not only in Goju Karate, but in Karate in general. And it really is more of an ancient view, but I tend to think, and I say this because of somebody in my field in the military and in doing security work over the years, that you need to be pressure tested. And I don't think pressure testing always means in competition. But I do think there has to be some hard sparring at some point. I think play sparring is overall better, but I think you have to spar some. And a play sparring allows you to try things and get better with your reflexes and get more skill. So as I get older, I think that's really the better. And what I mean by play sparring is a sparring where you're just going at it, having fun, yeah, being alert, being careful. And full contact sparring really beats the body down, so you can't do it as often, and you don't try things because you're only going to go to bread and butter stuff when it comes to more of a full contact or hard sparring. And when you play spar, you'll try new things, and as you try new things, you may get better at it, and you find out, boy, this really works for me. But if you're not pressure tested in some rough sparring occasionally, whether I think it's in the dojo, I don't think everybody has to go in competition, or pressure tested outside in competition, I don't know if it really works for someone in the street. And I can say that because I've ran into many martial artists in the street, and they just don't know what to do, or they react in a way that just doesn't work in a real fight. I think you do have to do some pressure testing in the dojo or outside the dojo to really know how to engage in a street fight and find out what works. And that's where my biggest disagreement would come from. But many people hold to this. So he has probably just as many people on his side as there's people on my side of it. I also say that because I'm not a throw the baby out with the bathwater type person. I believe I can have a disagreement or two with a book and still love the book and really like it. And that's how I look at this book. That's why I wanted to bring that last part up. I don't bring it up as a reason I want to get into a discussion or an argument with him or others. It's that overall, I think the book is absolutely terrific. And I think it's terrific in that disagreement because then I can wrestle with my ideas juxtaposed with someone else's ideas. And I wish more of us could do that in the world. We have become throw the baby out with the bathwater type of society, in my opinion, lately. And I find that disturbing. So overall, I recommend if you are a Goju practitioner in any form, or if you're just a karate practitioner or martial arts, and you want a good book to read and add to your library, that this book by Lex Optan is a very good book to have in your library. Thank you very much. Have a spectacular day. Os.